Hello Whovians, my name is Charlie and welcome back to a brand new Doctor Who YouTube video. Today I will be doing my monthly Classic Who review for the month of April, and this month, following the pattern of First Doctor stories in the forms of An Unearthly Child and the Daleks, I will be reviewing the 1964 story The Edge of Destruction. It is 2 parts long and features the First Doctor, Ian Chesteron, Barbara Wright and Susan Foreman in terms of companions. So I recently watched this story, and in this video I will share, just my thoughts and opinions on this 2-part story, evaluating, the plot, the individual episodes and characters, and giving the story a percentage score. If you enjoy my content, please do give this video a like, I would really appreciate it, and comment below with your opinion on The Edge of Destruction. I would love to hear your thoughts and opinions on this story, as it's, a very often forgotten story of Classic Who, and especially seeing as how early on it was, so I'd like to hear your opinions on the story if you have seen it. Now, let's find out my opinions on The Edge of Destruction. I hope you enjoy. So, let's start at the basics. The plot. This isn't a traditional Doctor Who story per se, as it takes place entirely in the 3 rooms of the TARDIS. It was made when the budget and sets were very limited and they barely had any room to film, so this literally does take place in 3 different rooms. The story of this is essentially that the TARDIS is broken and is causing everyone to lose their memories and go slightly insane. It's a very creative concept that works well on some levels, but I don't think there is nearly enough plot to fill out 1 episode, let alone 2. It has lots of filler and stretched out scenes, and the conclusion of the story is incredibly underwhelming, as the TARDIS is broken literally due to a faulty spring. That's right, the climax of the story is the Doctor fixing a faulty spring with a tool, and that's what the entire story was building up to. Sadly, this story didn't invest me as much as the other 2 Hartnell stories I've seen so far, but it did have some interesting ideas. I can see what they were going for. This story just doesn't really do it for me. Part 2. Structure. This is a strange story because it is only 2 parts, a structure typical of a 1980s story, specifically in the Colin Baker era in season 22. 2 parts do exist in Classic Who, The Visitation and the Sontaran Experiment being prime examples. I do have varying opinions on the 2 episodes in this story. I definitely prefer The Brink of Disaster, the 2nd part, over The Edge of Destruction, the 1st part. Although it does give us the aforementioned terrible conclusion, The Brink of Disaster does have some very nice character movements and sees the Doctor, Ian and Barbara finally getting along and properly initiates the pair onto the TARDIS crew rather than just them being stowaways. The Edge of Destruction, on the other hand, is the 1st part, and it's just okay. It does give us these very interesting plot elements, but it really drags, honestly, and it's padded out with so much filler, it's just not very entertaining to watch. In terms of the structure, though, at least this wasn't a 4-parter. Imagine how much they'd have to stretch this out being a 4-parter. Literally nothing would happen in 2 parts. Anyway, yeah, the structure of this is a bit strange, but kind of works. Now, onto a much more positive note, the characters. The saving graces of this story that kept it from crumbling to the ground. This story is largely about the characters and their interactions with each other. The purpose of this story, honestly, it wasn't even to give us a story. It was for the companions and the Doctor to get to know one another better and finally get along, and to fully develop the characters of Ian and Barbara, since, they were practically strangers in An Unearthly Child, and to an extent the Daleks. Most of the time they were separated anyway. So let's start off with the character of the Doctor. I didn't really like the first Doctor in An Unearthly Child, and however he was much more likeable in the Daleks, which felt a bit out of place. However, I think they just absolutely hit the nail on the head with him in the story. He is absolutely great, he is warming to the companions, but he still remains, the grumpy old man persona that we all know and love. Next we have Ian and Barbara, who are just as amazing as ever in The Edge of Destruction. We see their characters develop as they lose their memories, and when they finally warm to Susan and the Doctor, it's a really heartfelt, sweet moment that, I really enjoy, and I think, boosts this story up, maybe 5 or 10% or so. Susan, on the other hand, I don't really like in this story. I don't like her in general, honestly. She is incredibly annoying and whiny. Not as bad as in the first 2 stories. I don't necessarily hate the character though. You know, she's actually acted okay, but yeah, there are worse companions, but I really don't really like her. I don't think she's a very likable character at all. So yeah, the characters, they do develop most of the characters a lot, but Susan, I've never really liked Susan. As per review tradition, here are 5 things I like about The Edge of Destruction. Number 1. The characters get lots of character development in the story, and finally begin to get along and like each other. Number 2. Susan really isn't as bad as she is in An Unearthly Child and the Daleks, and although she isn't growing on me yet, she doesn't infuriate me as much. Number 3. The plot does give us some interesting concepts and ideas. Not nearly as much to make a fully fledged story, but, you know, it's getting there. Number 4. The incidental music is great. It's nearly non-existent in the first 2 stories, and I'm glad that they really utilised the music for this episode. Number 5. It is incredibly impressive that they managed to create a story with literally 3 sets in an insanely small budget, and still make it at least a little bit entertaining. It's a very impressive feat, and I'm glad they managed to pull it off. Now, here are unfortunately 3 things that I don't really like about The Edge of Destruction. Number 1. The plot meanders and is crammed with filler and padding that does make it seem quite boring. Number 2. The conclusion of the story is so incredibly underwhelming and poorly written that it really, makes the rest of the absolutely all of the plot meaningless. And number 3, the acting isn't overly great. No offence to the actors, they tried their best, but I wouldn't say they're as on point as in the first 2 stories. Bear in mind this is an anomaly for Classic Who. I think in general it's really quite good actually. In conclusion, this is a fairly mediocre story, which surprised me since I usually have high opinions of even hated episodes like, Time Lash, Terminus, Delta and the Bannermen. Stories like that I really generally enjoy. However, I think I'll give The Edge of Destruction a 58% on the Dimension 5 Productions review meter. It's by far my least favourite first Doctor story so far, but it's still fine, and I like it a bit, but it just doesn't really hold up as well as I thought it was since I've watched it twice. But yeah, overall, it's okay. Thanks for watching this video, everyone. I really do hope you enjoyed it, and yeah, again, feel free to comment with your opinions on the story. I really would appreciate it if you did comment, and like if you enjoy my content. Next time, then, I will be releasing a trailer for the next chapter of my fan series, at the beginning of Time, Chapter 1. I will see you then, everyone. Thanks for watching, and goodbye.